to everyone watching at home. Tonight represents a break from our routine of the past several months, as my first presentation to you does not focus on the immediate concerns of COVID-19 and our initial back to school efforts. While it is important to continuously focus on our pressing needs as they relate to our current unique situation, it is also equally critical for us to think about our district's long-term goals and objectives for our students. So as such, I'm excited to present to you this evening my official entry plan and goals for the year. Right. My entry plan is far more than a list of proposed changes or a to-do list. It is a strategic blueprint designed to elevate the Everett Public Schools to new heights. It is a process that requires stubbornness and flexibility. On the one hand, I am unyielding in my commitment to reaching our primary goals. On the other, I am receptive to making modifications and enhancements to specific facets of this entry plan as needs arise and as our circumstances, which we know have often been changing. So the crucial thing is that we are always moving towards our ultimate destination. So fortunately for me, I do not have to shoulder this burden alone. In addition to the talented and dedicated educators I work with every day, I am greatly benefiting from my participation in the new Superintendent Induction Program, or NSIP, and the work I do with my mentor, Mary Bork. You will learn more about NSIP and Dr. Bork during this presentation. Before we dive in, it is important to note as well that this presentation doesn't represent the start of this journey. Obviously, I have been in my position since March, and my entry plan has already started to take shape over that time. COVID-19 has been regrettable on every level, but it has not diminished our ability to begin the work I see as essential to fulfilling our overall mission. So to tell you a little bit more about the new Superintendent Induction Program, it is a collaboration between the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, or DESE, and the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents. It is designed to do precisely what you would expect, which is for new superintendents to learn as much as they can from smart and experienced educators and bring that to bear in their own districts. So this 3-year program provides a firm foundation of support on research-based practices for new superintendents. In addition to the content days, each superintendent is paired with a coach who provides guidance and advice throughout the process. The program is meant to teach new superintendents replicable best practices, to provide expert coaching that goes well beyond mentoring, and offers multiple opportunities for deep collaboration with peers. And NSIP, as it is known, ensures that each superintendent begins their first year with a strong entry plan for engaging our stakeholders and gathering the information needed to develop a widely understood and focused strategy to accelerate student learning. So my participation in the new Superintendent's Induction Program has been engaging and fulfilling. I'm constantly meshing what I know our district needs with what I learned from my colleagues and from my coach, Dr. Mary Bork, who I'd like to introduce everyone to tonight. Dr. Bork is the recently retired, long-serving superintendent of the Chelsea Public Schools and the current director of government affairs for the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents. Dr. Bork brings with her more than 37 years of experience in education that include being a classroom teacher, assistant principal, deputy superintendent, and superintendent. A lifelong educator committed to improving urban education and opening the doors of opportunity for all students, Dr. Bork is uniquely qualified to help me work with the students and families of a community as richly diverse as Everett. Dr. Bork is a proud graduate of the Chelsea school system. As a first-generation college grad, she received a Bachelor of Arts degree in History, Political Science, and Secondary Education from Salem State University. She later received a Master's in Education and Administration, Training and Policy, and a doctorate in Education Leadership and Administration, both from Boston University School of Education. Her doctoral research focused on the impact of student mobility in urban districts and its consequences on performance accountability. Her work has been the basis for reform to state policy, most prominently by the Commonwealth's decision in 2010 to include churn or mobility rate of students in school and district's annual profiles. More recently, student mobility and transiency was taken into consideration in the 2018 revision to the state's accountability framework. Dr. Burke is intimately familiar with our immediate area as she is a founding member of the 5-district partnership, which includes Everett, Chelsea, Malden, Revere, and Winthrop. Dr. Burke's list of accomplishments and awards are too numerous to mention in this setting, as are the boards, commissions, and committees she has served on. What must be said is that she is a highly respected educational leader in the Commonwealth in general and among urban educators in particular. She is an invaluable resource to me, which means she is an invaluable resource to the Everett Public Schools. I feel incredibly honored to have her as my mentor, and it has been, she has been a lifesaver, especially when we had to close down schools on my 9th day. She has definitely been a very important resource for me as I navigated this time. So I'd like to, with your permission, invite Dr. Burke to say a few words.
Make a motion to invite Dr. Mary Burke.
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded to invite Dr. Burke before us. Roll call, please, Addie.
Miss Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Panarisi, Mr. Parker, Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Miss Sarney,
Yes.
Mr. Barrows,
Yes.
Miss Cardello,
Yeah.
Miss Lambert,
Yes.
Mr. LaMonica,
Yes.
Mr. Abraze.
Yes. In the affirmative, motion passes. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you so very much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Madam Superintendent, and to the entire school committee. I grew up in Chelsea, as Superintendent Tahalini has said. I feel as if Everett is my second home city, considering the fact that I attended and I still attend Our Lady of Grace Church, which the center aisle is divided. Half is in Chelsea and half of the other half of church is in Everett. So I think that's been a very unique piece. I'm thrilled to be partnering as coach in the new superintendent's induction program with Superintendent Tahalini. And since March 1st, when she began, and as she said, 9 days later, the world fell apart. I honestly have been so impressed with her commitment, her work ethic, vision, and her absolute love of the Everett children and families. To you, the Everett School Committee, you hired the best, and I do applaud you. I am looking forward to certainly continuing to work with your superintendent as she continues to serve all of you, the families and the children of the Everett schools. And I am more than welcome to take any questions about the new superintendent's induction program.
Dr. Parker.
Not a question, but a comment. Welcome, Dr. Burke. I'm really excited. When we announced that we were looking for a new superintendent, it pretty much coincided with the announcement of your retirement. And my first word was, let's get Burke. So I'm thrilled that you'll be mentoring.
You sort of got me. You sort of got me.
I was, whenever she told me that you're going to be her mentor, I was absolutely thrilled because you're going to have a combination of two wonderful educators working together. And I must have missed you, Our Lady of Grace, because I usually go to St. Mary's, the second half of the Morning Star collaboration with Father Sheridan. So
Right.
thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Barrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Dr. Burke. I've been always admire your work and what you've done in Chelsea for so many years. How long is the program? Does that last for a year? It lasts for longer than that?
So it's a full 3-year program, but it's a gradual release. So the first year is the most intense in terms of support, and then we sort of roll it back from there. At the same time, it builds such a relationship between the coach and the coachee that honestly, the relationship never goes away. And so I was actually part of the very first cohort of the new superintendent's induction program. So I can also attest as someone who had a coach, how much that becomes a lifelong relationship in terms of professionalism and collegiality.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you again.
Anyone else? Well, Dr. Burke, from the chair, I will echo my colleagues' welcome to you. Really appreciate, and you're sort of preaching to the choir in terms of raving about our new superintendent. And at the same time, Dr. Burke, maybe with your experience, again, with some of my conversations with our superintendent and the people out there, I think some of them have sort of lost sight of what we're going through right now in terms of the severity, how we're going through completely unprecedented times. I mean, can you, in your experience, recall anything that can be even remotely as challenging as what we, and in particular, our new superintendent is going through right now?
Absolutely not. I can't remember anything. And you're talking to a child of Chelsea. I grew up in Chelsea. And so these days are calling on all of us to put aside any type of division and to work together. First and foremost, to make sure our children and our families are fed and that they're safe, and then to make sure that we're giving them the best possible education we can in these very difficult circumstances. And I think that, the other thing I would add is that there has to be a whole lot of forgiveness going around, because this is unprecedented. We are going to make mistakes. Educators are going to make mistakes. Parents are going to make mistakes. Kids are going to make mistakes. School committees are going to make mistakes. So there really has to be a whole lot of forgiveness, because we're in uncharted territories and we're doing the best we can. So we have to stick together, collaborate, and just be good, strong thought partners for each other to problem solve.
Thank you, Doctor. Anyone else? Again, thank you, Doctor, for your presence and for your support. And
Thank you.
I guess, as Ms. Cardella would say, we excuse you with the customary thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I hand it back to Madam Superintendent, and I will stay on just to hear the rest of her presentation, and then I will probably leave you for the evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Burke, and I just want to thank her again for constantly being available to me. She let me know early on that I could text or call her at all hours of the night, and I definitely have, and she has always been available to me. So I really very much appreciate it, and again, couldn't be more honored to have been partnered with her. So as I start with the entry plan, I would like to put a finer point on the core values that I actually articulated when I interviewed for and accepted the superintendent's position in late 2019 and earlier this year. So in most general of terms, my core values are to integrate, access, empower, and cultivate. Integrate refers to the need to ensure that content areas and learning experiences result in authentic and meaningful learning experiences for EPS students. Although the current teaching and learning model is very different than what any of us could have imagined just 8 short months ago, we have seized on this as a critical opportunity to integrate technology and education. We are in the middle of a transformation in which the 21st century skills that our students need are now ingrained into how they are receiving their core instruction. More crucially, we have made tremendous progress in closing technology gaps among our students by providing thousands of Chromebooks, iPads, and Wi-Fi hotspots to families who need them, and we continue to do so. And our administrators and leaders have been working tirelessly to develop the resources that our teachers need in order to grow more and more comfortable with the technology and online tools and platforms. All of this ebbs very nicely into my second core value, which is providing access. This extends from our students and families to our teachers and staff across all levels of our district. So from providing easy access to relevant professional development for our teachers, to giving our families the tools that they need to access district and school-based information, we are already making meaningful strides in this area, and we will continue to do so moving forward. When we speak about access, we are also speaking about equity, which is a critically important stream of work that we are calling Elevating Equity for Everett. You've already joined this effort by adopting an anti-racism resolution and forming an equity, inclusion, and diversity subcommittee. I will further discuss our equity framework a little later in the presentation. My third core value is to empower. So it is my role to empower our teachers, our administrators, and staff to provide them with the tools and the support that they need to put our students at the center of everything that they do. This requires me to enhance and expand what we are doing well, in addition to introducing new approaches and initiatives. I am confident that we have successfully started this process by implementing a new organizational chart that fosters much clearer lines of communication, greater collegiality, and more pointed collaboration. My final core value is to cultivate a welcoming and safe environment where we can all grow and thrive. Naturally, the literal health of our students is always paramount, and we are all aware of the pressing safety concerns brought on by COVID-19. But I am also speaking with equal passion about the need to cultivate an atmosphere where the members of our community receive the academic and social and emotional support that they need. I also want to cultivate an atmosphere in which families and stakeholders are encouraged to share their opinions and ideas. I want to cultivate community outreach efforts that connect parents with their students' education. And within our buildings, I want to cultivate a working environment in which everyone is free to express themselves with energy and passion, as well as professionalism and positivity. My entry plan is divided into 3 phases that aim to keep us on task, while also recognizing that not every phase of our plan will be realized on the same schedule. So I can report, however, that phase 1 is close to completion. The process of engaging and understanding began during my interview process when I met with all of you, as well as stakeholders and members of the community. This did allow me to develop a very firm idea of the district's need in the short, medium, and long term. So those conversations helped tailor this entry plan that I presented at my original interview, and that has been revised over my time here. Obviously, my transition to the superintendent's position was quickly consumed by COVID-19. This reality, however, did not prevent me from meeting the demands of phase 1 by meaningfully engaging with all constituencies of the school community to learn about the district priorities, initiatives, curricula, communications, finances, and student achievement. I continue to engage in my listening and learning tour, where I am speaking with educators at all levels of the organization. While I have an end date on this tour, I cannot even imagine not continuing these conversations over time to ensure that we are continually moving in the right direction as a district, and to ensure that I'm continually hearing from educators at all levels of our organization. Some of my greatest insights into the district have been garnered through these conversations. Phase 2, which is synthesizing and strategizing, flows logically from the process of engaging and understanding. Over the next 3 months, our leadership team will be taking all of the information and data we have gathered and transform it into a strategic plan in partnership with you. Finally, there is phase 3, integration and implementation. From January of 2021 through the end of this school year, we will begin to enact that strategic plan, emphasizing authentic learning achieved through integration of instruction. It is my hope, as I know it is all of yours, that phase 3 will coincide with a return to in-person teaching and learning. So our responsibility as educators and human beings demands that we help in every possible way those who have historically been marginalized and left behind. So as I mentioned before, we are calling this effort Elevating Equity for Everett. This initiative will not and should not be completed quickly, but the work must commence immediately. Most fundamentally, we want to create equal access in everything that we do. No facet of the Everett Public Schools will be too small to be viewed through our equity lens. Equal access to opportunities and tools, equitable treatment, and shared responsibility. These are the things we must do to achieve the ultimate success, which is comparable academic achievement among all of our students. But as with any major endeavor, we need to embrace the process as much as any potential rewards, and this won't be easy work. In the coming months, we will begin to delve into this work in a deliberate fashion. Firstly, we have to develop an awareness and understanding of bias. So this entails a self-assessment of culture and biases and willingness to have courageous conversations starting in our central office and eventually among our staff. Carefully planned, high quality professional development will be central to this part of the initiative and has already begun. Next, we will need to focus on cultural learning and relationship building. This includes examining cultures to build relationships with students and families that refrains from making assumptions about class, ethnicity, race, ability, age, home life, and language. 2, building strong relationships with students and families that acknowledges differing degrees of comfort. And 3, developing rapport and alliance building techniques to create the trust needed for deep learning in the classroom. The final major phase revolves around culturally and linguistically sustaining practices. This process will help empower students by setting high academic expectations for everyone. It will challenge our traditional curricula that excludes the contributions and perspectives of traditionally underrepresented racial and ethnic groups. And it will allow for our students to have more authentic, diverse, and global learning experiences that will prepare them for the world in which we currently live. So these are only highlights of our Elevating Equity in Everett plan. I know I speak for our entire leadership team when I say that I look forward to talking exclusively about this initiative in the coming months. Finally, these are my wide-angle goals for the Everett Public Schools, which I've divided into 3 major areas that each contains their own key actions. So the first we've already discussed, that is my participation in the new superintendent induction program. It will help me to continue to sharpen my skills in strategy development, data analysis, and instructional leadership by actively engaging in the first year of this program. I promise to you to bring the best and most relevant aspects of this valuable program to Everett each and every day. Of my 2 major district-wide goals, the first is an overall recalibration of the foundational components of the district. By doing this, we will be able to increase our levels of transparency, streamline processes, and enhance efficiencies to bolster support for our students. So the key tasks for completing this goal are as follows. 1, to assess the current financial health of the district and identify any and all ways to increase transparency in the school budget process. This will include a deep dive into all of our existing district contracts so we can identify overlaps, redundancies, and potential savings. We will be resourceful and responsible in securing the funding that our students need. 2, we will recruit a leadership team and staff that align to the vision and goals of the district, a process we have already begun by filling key central office staff, including a grants director, a chief financial officer, and a new human resources director. We continue to review and delineate staff functions based on student need to determine the overall organizational structure so that staff will not only be held accountable, but will also be provided the necessary support to be successful. 3, the EPS will engage diverse stakeholders in decision-making while intentionally centering equity in the approach to all levels of work and district decisions. My second district improvement objective is to amplify the voices of all members of the EPS community so we can meaningfully join hands in creating an inclusive and innovative future. So this calls for a 4-pronged approach that starts with establishing effective communication methods that are collaborative and that allow for equitable processes to ensure access for all members of the EPS community. Secondly, we will create opportunities for feedback, including committees, student advisory councils, forums, and surveys. All of these will help inform and recommend the practices that we adopt and the major work streams that we end up developing. Thirdly, we will revamp our hiring process to ensure that a hiring committee is comprised of various stakeholders to obtain different perspectives and inclusivity. And finally, I will continue to conduct a listen and learn tour to help understand the educational landscape and the vision of all of our different stakeholders. So I want to thank you for your time and attention. It is an absolute honor to be serving as the superintendent of the Everett Public Schools. The last few months have been challenging, but I appear before you tonight with the same bottom line goal that I had when I first met all of you last year, which is to make the Everett Public Schools the best and most coveted school district in the Commonwealth. At this time, I will take any questions you may have.
Mr. Parker.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Madam Superintendent. Any thought on the engagement and understanding aspect of doing any more surveys, such as what we witnessed for the Student Opportunity Act?
Yes, in fact, we have, I know you're not speaking specifically to the Student Opportunity Act.
No, just as an example, right?
But as an example for that, I actually feel that we are going to need to actually redo those surveys, especially considering our current climate and our current model, in order to get feedback from the community to really determine what is the new future. So as we even launch the Student Opportunity Act work, which is still going to be coming down the line, we will be garnering feedback in that way. But also, I do definitely agree with you that, you know, surveys could serve as a meaningful resource for me, and getting to understand the community and getting to hear some of the feedback that since I won't be able to speak to absolutely everyone. So right now, what I'm doing my best to do is to meet with as many educators and stakeholders as I can. And then after I'm done with those first meetings, I think it's a great idea to then release a survey where I can garner feedback from those that I wasn't able to speak directly to.
Okay. And you inherited a district improvement plan. In fact, you were challenged whether or not you remembered it. What is the status of that plan, in the sense of, like, when is the next revision due? And in your 7 months in this capacity, how well does that district improvement plan actually relate to what you've seen in Everett Public Schools over the last 7 months? I mean, if you just wanted to rank that plan like 1 to 10, that would work for me.
You know, I think there's so many aspects of it that are actually still very relevant. And I was not only looking through that plan, but I was actually looking through some of the previous plans that I now have at my access to kind of see what the genesis has been over time. And so it's been nice for me to be able to kind of come in with sort of fresh eyes and like what I would want my plan to be. However, I do think that that plan is going to play very strongly into what we do moving forward. So as I'm creating the strategic plan with your feedback, I also am going to be doing the same with our principals as well. And one of the sets of documents that we'll be using are not only their school improvement, their individual school improvement plans that they had all presented on last year, but also the overall district one, because I want to make sure that whatever we're doing as a district is meaningful to everybody, that everybody sees the overall vision, and that we are all moving forward. I don't want anybody to feel like we are stagnating, we're going backwards, we're doing things we've already done. So while again, it's nice to bring fresh eyes in and be able to say, this is what I see, I do also want to make sure that that final strategic plan integrates a lot of what you have already seen before, a lot of what the principals have said they wanted to do in the past, but also maybe give some room for things that they maybe hadn't thought about before, to be able to even make that a more robust plan moving forward.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Murray, and then I see you, Ms. Lambert, too.
Good evening, Superintendent and fellow members of the board. Sorry, I'm a little tired, so I'm going to try to articulate this thought, and you might have to bear with me. So I was thinking about what you were talking about in terms of increasing the diversity of the curriculum. And obviously it's not the school board's position to be dictating curriculum to the schools. That's a different skill set that's not ours. But I was wondering if you're thinking globally in terms of making sure that in addition to being reflective of our more diverse population, if we're also thinking about making sure that we're pushing our students into exploring cultures and backgrounds beyond their own, so that we're not just, reinforcing and making sure that they're seeing themselves reflected in their curriculum, but also being introduced to other cultures as well and other peoples whom they are likely to encounter as time goes on in their lives.
I think that's a great point because I do agree with you, and our populations do change over time as well. So while you want to make sure you're leveraging your community and their incredible rich background, and this is a community that is very diverse, so you do have the opportunity to integrate a lot of different cultures and backgrounds into the curriculum. But I do agree with you that it needs to make sure if we want our students to be global citizens, that our curriculum needs to match that, and that we need to be really thinking globally about what are the experiences and understandings that we want our students to come away with, not just the ones, like you said, that they are going to encounter. Because what I will say about the student body here is I do feel like they do have this rich diversity around them, and they do know a lot about the different cultures around them, probably more so than even we do or the staff do. They do learn a lot from one another. They do start to pick up one another's languages and even start to celebrate one another's holidays and things like that. So how can we start to not just leverage that, but then also make sure that we are really representing a full body of cultures and diversities and ones that are outside of what they currently have around them here in Everett.
And my second question before I give it over to Ms. Lambert is a nuts and bolts question. So with COVID and everything that's going on, is DESE expecting a district improvement plan? And are we expecting whole school improvement plans this year, or are we just going to sort of meld from the ones from last year?
My understanding is that we are melding from ones for last year, and that what I am going to be responsible for returning over is my new superintendent induction plan, and how I'm using that to also be a leverage point for our district improvement plan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Murray. Ms. Lambert?
I'm all set. Sorry, I was playing with my thing.
Anyone else? Mr. Barrows?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Superintendent. Right now, I mean, your plan is terrific, is great. So part of this whole implementation is going to depend also on what's going to happen with COVID, right? Because or these things that you are presenting and that you're planning to implement, you intend to do regardless if the virus continues to get worse and we're going to continue to be remote, or if we're going to keep our plan to go back in person, like how that's going to change, your implementation, your plan based on what's this virus, the uncertain around this virus.
I think it will change how I'm doing it, but it won't change what I'm doing or my eventual goals. So I think that, for example, the listening and learning tour, just to pick a very simple example, originally I was doing in-person interviews for those first, even before I officially started on March 1st. And then we moved to some phone ones and Zoom ones, and now it's kind of a hybrid of all three. As for, district improvement and, making sure that, we're streamlining processes, we're enhancing efficiencies, bolstering support for our students. I think these are all things that we've had to do over the past few months. Maybe they weren't exactly the way I had imagined we were going to do them, but they definitely have been incredibly important. In fact, I think that with COVID, it's been even more important that we're efficient, that we're streamlining processes, that we're, removing redundancies. I was very proud of the fact that we were able to, we unfortunately had to cut a budget, and some really hard decisions had to be made, and yet we didn't have to ask for the city for extra money. We were able to work within our budget. We were able to, even within that, purchase Chromebooks for students and iPads for students, wireless hotspots, and IMAX for our teachers. And so we were able to do all of those things because we, moved around the money. We identified areas where we could be more efficient. And so I think that these are things that will continue to happen regardless of where COVID takes us. And I think they're going to be important regardless of where COVID takes us. I think, but the how will definitely change. Like the how we identified some of those efficiencies and resolved them was different based on the fact that we were remote and needed to be remote this upcoming year. If anything, I feel like COVID probably forced us to make some changes that I had thought about as long-term changes and made us have to, quicken our pace in getting those things done. I did eventually want us to be a one-to-one for students and for teachers. That had originally been my plan for 2 to 3 years from now, but we had to move that up because of the current situation. So I think the how is definitely could be. I have to be flexible, but like I said before, I'll be flexible in the how, but have to be stubborn about the what I want to achieve and what we need to achieve at the very end.
Got it. All right. And just one last thing, which is not a question, but a suggestion. You mentioned, which is great, a lot about equity, and lens on equity. And part of this professional development plans that you have for the staff, I believe I mentioned to you before, but trainings not only on cultural sensitivity, but especially unconscious bias trainings. I've gone through that in my full-time job, and I think it's extremely important. The agents that I work closed for a day and brought even the state police unit to receive that training. I think is extremely important, and I think something that our staff, all of us, the school committee, everyone, would really benefit from a training like that, unconscious bias. Because sometimes we're like, well, I do understand, but sometimes you do things that you actually really don't. So then you find that out when you are going through a training like that. So I fully recommend that as part of this, one of the approach that you have regarding professional development for IPS staff. So, all right, thank you.
Charles, thank you. Ms. Cardello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, through you to everybody, I 100% agree with my colleague Marconi on the unconscious bias training. Very important for everybody, including all of us. Having said that, I just wanted to mention something to the superintendent. Last year, when my grandson was in kindergarten, I was absolutely amazed with epic reading materials for children. The diversity in text that he was reading was absolutely wonderful. It was so well written. It was colorful. It was about holidays. It was just everything that a child would want to read. Holidays that we may never hear about because they may be a lesser holiday in some ethnic groups, but they were there, and it taught about depression and suppression and bias, and it was just absolutely so well, so clean, so understandable. I said, even an adult can understand this and get something from it. I was amazed because I've always believed that the younger the person is, the better they will understand if you teach them at a very young age. Cannot wait for unconscious bias training until you're an adult. We're teaching them in our schools, and I know so many others, but that those programs, and if we're not offering it, it's something that people might want to look into. It's not even very expensive. The books there are just so rich in what they have to offer these children. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Cardello? Anyone else? Back to Ms. Murray.
Sorry, but Millie and Marconi made me think of something that I wanted to bring up. We talked about this a while ago, Superintendent. But as educators, we're both well aware of the fact that too often professional development for teachers is a one-size-fits-all model, despite the fact that we as teachers are expected to differentiate within our own classrooms. I would be remiss in not bringing up for my fellow educators the fact that it would be revolutionary and incredibly professionally moving for me, and I think for a lot of our colleagues across the city, to see professional development that offered sort of a tiered approach where people could enter where they needed to be, rather than having the assumption that everyone is at one base level or another. So I just wanted to plant that bug in your ear yet again, which I'm sure you have not forgotten about anyway. Thank you.
I never
Thank you,
forget
Ms. Murray.
Ms. Murray.
That's all right. All right, no further questions. All right, back to you, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you so much. And I did want to state that I had sent the plan to everyone, and I did get some great feedback that I will be implementing into the final plan. There were some wordsmithing areas. There were also some other stakeholders that were asked to be included. I will take some of the feedback that I've received today too, and make sure that those are reflected in my key action steps as well. I did want to respectfully request approval of my entry plan and goals with those edits.
So move to approve the superintendent's entry plan and goals as presented with the edits.
Seconded.
Okay, motion made and seconded to accept and approve the superintendent's entry plan and goals with the edits. Roll call, please, Addie.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Sarni,
Yes.
Mr. Barrows,
Yes.
Ms. Cardello,
Yes.
Ms. Lambert,
Yes.
Mr. LaMonica,
Yes.
Ms. Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Panarisi,
Yes.
Mr. Abraze.
Yes, 9 in the affirmative, motion passes.
Thank you so much. So item number